So, you picked up Fire Emblem Engage, expecting a fun matchmaking simulator with some light strategy thrown in, only to quickly learn that this game has teeth and is not afraid to use them. Well, worry not, I'm here with some early game tips that should ease the learning curve for you. Let's begin. Hello everyone, and my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I'm a small content creator aiming to make YouTube my full-time career. My goal is to hit 15,000 subs by the end of the year, so if you find my content useful, please subscribe. Thank you. For context, in this guide, I'm playing Engage on Hard Classic, and these tips come from my experience with the early game on this difficulty. They should work for normal as well, but I can't speak to maddening. Keep that in mind. Tip number 1 is plan around the break mechanic. And if there's nothing else that you take away from this video, let this be the thing that sticks. As a quick recap, the break mechanic is a new system in Fire Emblem Engage, where if you attack an enemy while you have the weapon triangle advantage, or they attack you in the same scenario, you will become broken and no longer be able to counterattack for the rest of the turn. And same goes for the enemy. If you break them, they will not be able to counterattack. This is huge. Plan around breaking enemy units and avoiding being broken yourself. I know this is probably obvious to some of you, but I can't overstate the importance of this tip all the same. I truly did not expect break to be such a massive part of Engage's gameplay, but on Hard Classic, it absolutely is. Being able to neutralize an enemy unit for your turn so your team can move in and swiftly finish them off, massive. Making sure that the same doesn't happen to you, even more so. Nothing feels worse than throwing a tanky unit like Vander into the fray to soften up the enemy on their phase, only for him to get broken by a random sword unit and sit there uselessly for a whole phase. Don't let this happen. Number 2, take and hold terrain. Terrain has been an important aspect of Fire Emblem's gameplay since the series' inception, but Engage may have the most impactful terrain we have ever seen. Simple squares like thickets boost avoid by a whopping 30%, and more advanced stuff like forts grant that same 30 avoid, as well as healing the unit in the fort by 10 per turn and making them unbreakable. Given my emphasis on how important the break mechanic is in the previous tip, it should be apparent why this is so strong. So, make sure you take the advantageous position when in combat. Hold terrain where you can, and pull enemies out of terrain whenever possible. Seeing as how these are two of the most basic terrain types in the series, I honestly cannot wait to see what other nonsense shows up later. Number 3 is scout the map carefully. And again, this probably seems like a no-brainer, but it ties back into our 2 previous points. Map design in Engage has been very solid thus far, with mixed enemy formations forcing you to carefully move forward lest you get swarmed or broken. By scouting thoroughly at the start of a battle, you can see what weapon types enemies are using and plan your squads accordingly to make best use of the weapon triangle as you possibly can. You can also ensure that if there's early terrain to take advantage of, you have your squad positioned in such a way as to get to it as fast as possible, utilizing it for yourself and denying it to the enemy. Finally, pay attention to what weapons enemies have. There was one moment in Chapter 4 in particular where I was completely unprepared for a perfectly positioned axe cavalry who ambushed me with a hand axe on literally turn 1 enemy phase, killing one of my units. On my phase, I had pushed forward with an axe unit to attack a basic lance infantry unit, assuming I was safe since it was, turn 1. Yet immediately after, on the enemy phase, the cavalry pushed up and killed my now weakened axe fighter with said hand axe. It was a surprisingly aggressive design choice from the game, and set the tone for what was to come. Number 4, keep track of enemy subclasses and what they do. A new feature of Fire Emblem Engage is subclasses, such as Backup or Covert. These subtypes grant various powerful effects, and the ones you'll see in the early game are as follows. Backup, which allows the unit in question to make a support attack against adjacent enemies when an ally attacks them. Covert has the insane effect of doubling terrain bonuses for the unit in question, making them very hard to hit. Armored makes the unit immune to being broken by weapon triangle disadvantage, making them quite powerful. Mystical ignores terrain bonuses for avoid when attacking an enemy, which will be vital when battling dodgy units, especially, again, given how powerful terrain effects are. Chi Adept, which allows the use of Chain Guard, protecting adjacent allies and taking damage in their stead. Dragon, which gains additional effects when engaged with emblems. And then two classic subtypes of unit, I suppose. Flying and Cavalry have been rolled into this system as well, without any real major changes though. Flying just, again, ignores all terrain effects as per usual, and Cavalry gets higher movement range, which is not anything. That's just how they've always been, so kind of a missed opportunity to give Cavalry something different. But keeping these subclasses and what they do in mind is a lot at first, I will admit. My hope is that listing them out here for you helps you to do so, as it really can't be overstated how much of an impact these subtypes will have. I personally have been taken off guard a few times already by armored units being unbreakable, for example. It just slips my mind, I don't think about it, and then suddenly my plan is falling apart when they counterattack me and I take a lot of damage. So, keep them in mind. Number 5, make use of personal skills. This one isn't quite highlighted by the game as much as some of the other mechanics at hand, but every unit in your party has a personal skill that can have some powerful effects in battle. For example, Alier's skill Divinely Inspiring grants adjacent allies +3 damage in battle and reduces the damage they take in return by 1. Other skills, such as Alfred's Self-Improver, boosts his strength by 2 when you end his turn without attacking or using an item, and Clan and Fram grant themselves and Allier 10 hit and avoid respectively when standing next to each other. These all may seem like small bonuses, but taken together with terrain bonuses and weapon triangle influences, they can make the difference between success and death. Just be aware of any positioning or other conditions you need to activate them, lest you miss out when you need them most. Number 6 is don't be afraid to engage. When you start a battle, any characters equipped with an emblem ring will have their engage meter fully charged. There is a reason for this. It is in your best interest to engage at the first opportunity that it would be useful. Enemies are strong in Engage, often stronger than you are. You'll see your hit rates and damage might actually be lower than certain enemies, even when you have weapon triangle advantage, again, on Hard Classic at the very least. Being able to use the Engage mechanic to even those odds, soften up enemy stats, boost your own stats, get special abilities, access to powerful attacks, etc., 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 for a few turns, can really help soften up the initial wave that you're going to face in any given map. And once your Engage runs out, you will start building it back up again, so it's better to spend it when and where you can. It's the same philosophy of always making sure you use a cooldown when it's off cooldown in something like WoW or Final Fantasy XIV, or if you play Destiny, using your super rather than just holding on to it the entire game. You'll get more opportunities to use more powerful things if you use them when they become available. Doubly so when you consider the existence of emblem energy pools that will fully refill your Engage meter when you step in them. Finally, the more often you can engage, the more often you'll be able to use your special once per engage attacks, such as Lodestar Rush. So don't fall into the classic RPG trap of saving it for when I need it. You always need it. Don't end the battle without having engaged at all, unless you're doing some sort of challenge run, which is fine if you want to, but don't do that to yourself. Plan out when you're going to use them based on when you think you'll be able to get engage pools, or just when you need it, and you'll find you're doing a little bit better than if you were just holding on to it. Number 7 is a Fire Emblem classic. Don't overuse Vander. Don't make the mistake of giving this powerful, on the surface, paladin too much XP, even though you do get him at the start of the game, and he will mess up the enemy for you for quite a while. Vander falls into a character archetype known as Jagan, named after the first of their kind from Fire Emblem 1, Marth's stalwart defender. Typically coming in the form of a paladin or a great knight, Jagans are characterized by being very strong in the early game, but having typically quite poor growth rates, meaning they will fall behind the rest of the party with time. As such, you want to avoid giving kills to Vander, using him instead to weaken enemies for easy cleanup by units with more potential. Thanks to his tanky stats and high damage, he is great at this role, so don't be afraid to use him either. Just save the kills for the others. You'll be much better off in the long run. And that, my friends, is my first set of tips for Fire Emblem Engage. I hope you all found it useful. As I continue to stream my playthrough of the game, I will keep my eyes peeled for other useful information that deserves to be highlighted. If you have any particular questions or any guide topics you'd like to see covered, let me know in the comments or in my Discord, and I'll get to what I can, where I can. Again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night, stay safe and healthy out there, and remember, be good to each other. Bye now.